The bullet shattered the whiskey bottle 3 inches from Olivia Jackson's hand, spraying amber liquid across the mahogany bar, and she didn't even flinch because, in a place like the Red Rose Tavern in Hot Springs, New Mexico territory, during the summer of 1882, broken glass and gunfire were just part of another Saturday night. She straightened her spine, meeting the drunken cowboy's bleary gaze with steady green eyes that had seen far worse than his attempted intimidation. The man wobbled on his feet, his revolver still smoking in his unsteady grip. Around them, the tavern had gone silent, every patron frozen in that particular stillness that came when violence hung in the air like smoke. "That's enough, Miller," Olivia said, her voice carrying across the room despite its softness. "You've had your fun. Now pay your tab and get out." Miller's face flushed red beneath several days' worth of grime and stubble. "Don't you tell me what to do, you painted woman. You're nothing but a tavern girl, probably worse when the lights go down." The words stung, not because they were true, but because Olivia had heard variations of them almost daily since she'd started working at the Red Rose 6 months ago. The decent women of Hot Springs crossed the street when they saw her coming. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men assumed she was available for more than just serving drinks, and when she corrected that assumption, they spread rumors that she was cold, haughty, or worse. None of them knew that she worked 16-hour days to send money back to her younger sister in St. Louis, that she'd fled an arranged marriage to a cruel banker 3 times her age, or that she'd chosen honest work over a dozen easier but morally compromising options. They saw only the low-cut dresses her employer required, the rouge on her cheeks, and the setting where she spent her days. Before Olivia could respond to Miller's insult, the tavern doors swung open with enough force to bang against the walls. The man who entered had to duck slightly beneath the frame, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. His hat shadowed his face, but Olivia could see the set of his jaw, square and determined. Dust covered his dark coat and boots, suggesting a long ride. "Isaiah Dalton," someone whispered near the bar. The name meant nothing to Olivia, but it clearly meant something to Miller, whose face went from red to white in the span of a heartbeat. The gun in his hand wavered, then slowly lowered. Isaiah Dalton moved into the light, and Olivia felt something shift in her chest. He was younger than she'd expected from the authority he commanded, probably close to her own 22 years. His face was tanned and weathered from outdoor work, with lines around his eyes that suggested he squinted into the sun often. Those eyes were a startling blue, made even more striking by the darkness of his hair and the shadow of stubble along his jaw. But it wasn't his appearance that caught her attention. It was the way he looked at the situation, at her, with an assessment that seemed to strip away pretense and see right down to the truth. Not with judgment or lust, but with a kind of penetrating clarity that made her want to stand taller. "Miller," Isaiah said, his voice a low rumble that somehow carried more authority than any shout could have. "You're making a fool of yourself. Again. This isn't your business, Dalton. I'm just having words with the help." Isaiah crossed the room in long, measured strides. He didn't draw the gun holstered at his hip, didn't make any threatening gestures. He simply moved with the confidence of a man who knew his own capabilities and didn't need to prove them. "You fired a weapon in an enclosed space full of people," Isaiah said. "You could have killed someone." "That makes it everyone's business." He held out his hand. "Give me the gun, sleep it off. We'll talk tomorrow when you're sober." For a moment, Olivia thought Miller might refuse. His fingers tightened on the revolver, his jaw clenching with stubborn pride. Then, gradually, the fight drained out of him. He placed the gun in Isaiah's hand and stumbled toward the door, muttering under his breath, The tension in the room broke like a snapped wire. Conversations resumed, cards were dealt again, and the piano player returned to his slightly off-key rendition of a Stephen Foster tune. But Olivia remained still behind the bar, watching as Isaiah Dalton emptied the bullets from Miller's revolver and tucked them into his pocket. Then he turned those blue eyes on her, and she felt the full force of his attention. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No." Her voice came out steady, thank goodness. "But I appreciate your intervention. Miller's harmless when he's sober. When he's drunk, he's got a mean streak." Isaiah approached the bar, setting the empty revolver on its surface. "I'll make sure he gets this back when he's thinking clearly. You know him. I know most of the men in this territory. I run cattle on a spread about 10 miles northeast of here." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words. "I've seen you around town. You work here." It wasn't a question, but Olivia answered anyway. "For 6 months now. I serve drinks, keep the books, and occasionally break up fights, though I'm grateful I didn't have to handle this one alone." Something flickered in Isaiah's expression. "You shouldn't have to handle it at all. Pete Harmon owns this place, doesn't he? Where is he? In Santa Fe for the week, business with his suppliers. And he left you here alone, with no one to watch out for trouble." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "That's poor management." Olivia bristled slightly. "I can take care of myself, Mr. Dalton. I've been doing it for a long time." "I don't doubt that," Isaiah said, and his tone held no condescension. "But that doesn't mean you should have to." The simple statement, delivered without pity or judgment, hit Olivia harder than any of Miller's insults had. She busied herself cleaning up the spilled whiskey, needing something to do with her hands. "Can I get you a drink?" she asked. "On the house, as thanks." "I don't drink much," Isaiah said, "but I'd take coffee if you have it." Coffee. In a tavern where most men demanded rot-gut whiskey or cheap beer, this cowboy wanted coffee. Olivia found herself almost smiling as she moved to the pot that stayed warm on the small stove in the back. She poured a cup and brought it to him, their fingers brushing briefly as he took it from her. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her hand up her arm. From Isaiah's slight hesitation, she thought he might have felt it too. "Thank you, miss." He trailed off, waiting. "Jackson." "Olivia Jackson. Isaiah Dalton, though I suppose you've already heard that. Is your reputation such that everyone knows you?" Olivia asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "I hope not," Isaiah said dryly. "But I've lived in this territory most of my life. My father built our ranch from nothing, and I've been working it since I was old enough to sit a horse. People know the name, if not always the man." He sipped the coffee, and Olivia watched his shoulders relax slightly. In the better light, she could see the weariness around his eyes, the dust and strain of a long day's work. "You look tired," she said before she could stop herself. Isaiah's lips quirked in something that might have been a smile. 12 hours in the saddle checking fence lines will do that. "I was heading home when I heard the gunshot. Figured I should check it out." "Well, I'm glad you did. Miller might have escalated if someone hadn't intervened." "What will you do when Harmon gets back? Will you tell him what happened?" Olivia considered. Pete Harmon was a decent employer by most standards. He paid on time and didn't make unwanted advances, but he also expected his employees to handle difficulties without bothering him with details. If she complained about every drunk who got rowdy, she'd be complaining daily. "Probably not," she admitted. "It's handled now. No permanent damage except one bottle of whiskey." Isaiah frowned. He should know that his employee was put in danger. In his eyes, dealing with dangerous drunks is part of the job I signed up for, Olivia said, trying to keep the bitterness from her voice. "I need this work, Mr. Dalton. I can't afford to seem difficult or high maintenance." There's a difference between being difficult and expecting basic safety. Perhaps in your world, not in mine. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, edged with the frustration of 6 months spent being judged, dismissed, and disrespected. She expected Isaiah to take offense, to withdraw the way men did when reminded that their comfortable worldviews didn't apply to everyone. Instead, he looked at her with those penetrating blue eyes and said quietly, "You're right. I apologize. I don't know your circumstances or what constraints you're working under." The apology stunned her. In her experience, cowboys didn't apologize to tavern girls, certainly not with such directness and apparent sincerity. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling inadequate. Isaiah finished his coffee in silence while Olivia served other customers, aware of his presence at the bar like a warm coal in her peripheral vision. When she returned to collect his empty cup, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Miss Jackson," he said, "I wonder if I might ask you something personal." Olivia tensed. Here it came, the inevitable proposition or crude question. "You can ask, I may not answer." "Why do you work here? You're clearly educated, well-spoken. You keep the books, which means you can read and write and handle numbers. Those are rare skills. You could find work as a teacher or a clerk, positions that wouldn't." He trailed off. "Wouldn't what? Ruin my reputation. Make decent people cross the street to avoid me." Olivia heard the edge in her voice but couldn't soften it. "I work here because it pays 3 times what a teaching position would, and I need the money. My sister is 14 years old and living in a boarding house in St. Louis. I send her money every month so she can eat, have decent clothes, and eventually finish her education. When she's old enough and settled, maybe I'll have the luxury of worrying about my reputation. Right now, I'm more concerned with her survival." She'd said too much, revealed too much. Olivia bit her lip, waiting for the pity or the judgment or worse, the lack of interest entirely. Isaiah nodded slowly. "That's a good reason. A noble one. She's lucky to have a sister who loves her that much. No pity, no judgment, just simple acceptance as if her choice made perfect sense and required no defense." "I should go," Isaiah said, standing and placing a silver dollar on the bar, far more than the coffee cost. "But I'll be back in a few days. May I see you again?" "I work here most nights," Olivia said carefully, not sure what he was asking. "I know. I'm asking if I may come back to see you specifically, to talk with you, get to know you better." He held her gaze. "I'm asking if you'd be open to my courtship, Miss Jackson." Olivia's breath caught. Courtship. Not an offer to sneak off to a back room, not a crude proposition or a whispered suggestion. Courtship, spoken aloud in a tavern full of witnesses who would spread the news across town by morning. Why? The question escaped before she could consider whether she wanted to know the answer. "Because in the span of 30 minutes, you've shown more courage, intelligence, and integrity than most people show in a lifetime," Isaiah said simply. "Because you stood calm in the face of danger, because you work hard to protect someone you love, and because when I look at you, I see someone worth knowing, worth treasuring." Olivia's throat tightened. "You don't know me, and people will talk. They'll say terrible things about you keeping company with a tavern girl. Let them talk. I judge people by their character, not their circumstances. And from what I've seen of your character, Miss Jackson, it's solid gold." The words settled into Olivia's chest like a warm glow, pushing back against 6 months of judgment and scorn. She wanted to say yes, wanted it with a fierceness that surprised her. But she also needed to be honest. "I'm not looking for a casual flirtation, Mr. Dalton. I don't have time for games or empty promises." "Neither am I, and I don't make those," Isaiah said. "If I court you, it's because I'm seriously considering a future with you. I believe in being direct about intentions. direct, honest, respectful. Everything her arranged fiancé instinct. Louis hadn't been. Olivia drew a breath and made her decision. Then yes, Mr. Dalton, you may court me. I'd welcome the chance to know you better. The smile that crossed Isaiah's face transformed it, chasing away the weariness and bringing warmth to those blue eyes. Isaiah, please. And I'll call you Olivia if I may. You may. Then I'll say good night, Olivia. I'll be back Tuesday evening if that suits you. I'll be here. Isaiah tipped his hat to her, a gesture of respect that made several nearby patrons stare in surprise. And then he was gone, the tavern doors swinging shut behind him. Olivia stood behind the bar, her heart beating faster than it had when Miller fired his gun. Around her, the whispers had already started. Did you see that? Isaiah Dalton tipped his hat to her. Fool boy, thinking a tavern girl is worthy of courting. She must have offered him something special to get his attention like that. The words should have stung. Instead, Olivia found herself smiling as she wiped down the bar. Let them talk. Isaiah had looked past the setting and the assumptions to see her, truly see her. For the first time since she'd arrived in Hot Springs, someone had judged her character instead of her employment and found her worthy. That was worth any amount of gossip. The next 3 days passed with agonizing slowness. Olivia caught herself watching the clock, counting down the hours until Tuesday evening. She told herself she was being foolish, that Isaiah might change his mind, that the gossip might reach him and alter his opinion. But a stubborn hope had taken root in her chest, and it refused to be dislodged by practicality. Monday afternoon, while she was tallying the weekend's receipts in the small office behind the bar, Pete Harmon returned from Santa Fe. He was a portly man in his 50s with thinning hair and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. "Olivia," he said, settling into the chair across from the desk. "I hear there was some excitement while I was gone, so the gossip had reached him already." "Nothing I couldn't handle," Olivia said evenly. "Miller shot up the place from what I hear, scared some of the customers. 1 bottle was lost. I took the cost from his tab." Harmon nodded approvingly. "Smart. That's why I keep you on, girl. You've got a head for business." He paused. "I also hear Isaiah Dalton intervened and that he's courting you now." Olivia set down her pen carefully. "Is that a problem? Depends. Dalton's a good man, respected. If you're seen with him, some folks might think better of you. Others might think worse of him. Either way, it's attention on my establishment." Harmon studied her. "You serious about him, or is this a way to improve your standing?" The question rankled, but Olivia kept her voice level. "I barely know him, but he seems genuine in his interest and I'm willing to see where it leads. My personal life shouldn't affect my work here." "No, it shouldn't," Harmon agreed. "But things being what they are, I needed to ask. You're good at your job, Olivia. I'd hate to lose you because of some scandal." "There won't be a scandal," Olivia said firmly. "Isaiah is a gentleman and I know how to conduct myself with discretion." "I'm sure you do." Harmon stood, hitching up his belt. "Just remember, girl, men like Dalton don't usually marry women in your position. They might court them, might even have genuine feelings, but when it comes time to choose a wife, they pick someone whose reputation is spotless. Don't go getting your hopes up too high." The words echoed Olivia's own fears, the doubts that kept her awake at night, but she lifted her chin. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Harmon, but I can handle my own affairs. See that you do, and see that they don't interfere with your work." After he left, Olivia sat alone in the office, staring at the columns of numbers without seeing them. Harmon's warning circled in her mind like a vulture. What if he was right? What if Isaiah's interest faded once the novelty wore off, once he truly understood what it would mean to tie himself to someone with her reputation? But then she remembered the way Isaiah had looked at her, the respect in his voice, the directness of his intentions. He hadn't seemed like a man playing games or seeking a dalliance. He'd seemed genuine. She would hold on to that, at least for now. And if she was wrong, if Harmon's cynicism proved correct, well, she'd survived worse disappointments. Tuesday evening arrived wrapped in a spectacular sunset that painted the New Mexico sky in shades of orange and pink. Olivia had taken extra care with her appearance, pinning her dark auburn hair in a style that was elegant but not overly fussy, choosing a green dress that brought out her eyes. The dress was still cut lower than she'd prefer, per Harmon's requirements, but she'd added a lace insert that made it slightly more modest. The tavern filled with the usual crowd as the sun went down, ranch hands and miners coming in for drinks after a day's work, a few gamblers settling in for their nightly poker games. Olivia moved through the room, serving drinks and deflecting inappropriate comments with practiced ease. She was behind the bar when the doors opened and Isaiah walked in. He'd cleaned up since Saturday, his hair still damp from washing, his shirt fresh and neatly pressed. He wore no gun tonight, she noted, just clean denims and boots and that intense way of looking at her that made her pulse quicken. "Evening, Olivia," he said, claiming the same bar stool he'd occupied 3 nights before. "Evening, Isaiah. Coffee again, please. And whatever you'd recommend for dinner. I hear Harmon's cook makes a decent stew." "The best in town," Olivia confirmed. She poured his coffee and went to the kitchen, returning with a steaming bowl of beef stew and fresh bread. The cook, a Mexican woman named Rosa, had added extra vegetables when Olivia mentioned who it was for, a small kindness that warmed Olivia's heart. Isaiah ate while Olivia worked, but they talked in the spaces between her serving other customers. He told her about his ranch, the herd he was building, the land he hoped to acquire. She told him about her sister Emma, how bright she was, how much potential she had if given the right opportunities. "You must miss her," Isaiah said, "every day, but I see her in my mind getting stronger, smarter, building the life she deserves. That makes the distance bearable. How long since you've seen her?" 8 months. I left St. Louis in December." Olivia hesitated, then decided honesty was important if this courtship was to have any real foundation. "I was engaged to a man my father chose, a banker named Horace Whitmore. He was wealthy, influential, and 48 years old. I was 21. Isaiah's expression darkened. "Your father arranged this. My father died when I was 19, leaving debts. Horace offered to settle them in exchange for my hand. My mother thought it was a generous offer. She didn't see, or didn't want to see, that Horace was cruel. He enjoyed having power over people. The few times we were alone during our engagement, he made it clear that he expected absolute obedience once we were married. He wanted to mold me, break me, make me into something decorative and silent." "You refused him," Isaiah said. "It wasn't a question." "I ran. I took what little money I'd managed to save, promised Emma I'd send for her once I was established, and left in the middle of the night. Horace could have pursued me, but I don't think his pride would allow it. Better to tell people I was unstable or ungrateful than to admit I'd rejected him." "That took courage." "It took desperation," Olivia corrected. "I didn't have a plan beyond getting far away. I ended up here because my money ran out, and I took the first job I could find that paid enough to support both Emma and myself." Isaiah reached across the bar, his hand palm up in invitation. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and calloused from work. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "I know it wasn't easy. You deserve to know what you're getting into. My past isn't simple and my present isn't respectable. Your past shows strength and loyalty. Your presence shows determination and sacrifice. Those are respectable qualities, Olivia, no matter where you demonstrate them." The tightness in Olivia's chest eased. She squeezed Isaiah's hand before reluctantly withdrawing to serve another customer. But throughout the evening, she felt his presence like an anchor, steady and reassuring. As the night wore on and the tavern began to empty, Isaiah remained. When the last customer stumbled out into the darkness and Olivia began her closing duties, he stood and came around the bar. "Let me help," he said. "You don't have to do that, I know. But you've been on your feet all evening, and I'd like to spend a few more minutes with you before I head home." Together, they wiped down tables and stacked chairs. It felt surprisingly natural, working alongside him in comfortable silence. When they finished, Olivia locked the front door and led Isaiah out the back, into the small alley behind the tavern. The night air was cool and clean after the smoky atmosphere inside. Above them, stars scattered across the sky in brilliant profusion, undimmed by city lights. "I've enjoyed tonight," Isaiah said. "More than I expected to, honestly." "Why, what did you expect?" "I don't know. Awkwardness, maybe. Difficulty finding common ground. Instead, I feel like I've known you longer than 3 days." Olivia knew exactly what he meant. "I feel the same way." Isaiah turned to face her fully, his expression serious in the moonlight. "I want to be clear about my intentions, Olivia. I'm not a man who plays games or courts women for entertainment. When I said I was considering a future with you, I meant it. I'd like to continue seeing you, getting to know you better, with the goal of marriage if we suit each other." "Marriage," Olivia repeated, the word both thrilling and terrifying. "Isaiah, you hardly know me, and the people in this town will make your life difficult if you choose me. I know myself well enough to recognize when something feels right. You feel right. As for the town, their opinions matter less to me than your character, which I'm coming to admire greatly." He reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight. I'm just being honest about where I hope this leads." "I appreciate that honesty," Olivia said softly. "I hope for the same thing, but I'm also practical enough to know that hope and reality don't always align. Then we'll take it one day at a time and see what reality brings us." Isaiah smiled. "May I see you again, Thursday evening?" "I'll be here." "Of course you will," Isaiah said, and there was no criticism in his tone, just acknowledgement. "One day I hope you'll be somewhere that values you properly, but until then I'll come to you here." He bid her good night with another tip of his hat, that gesture of respect that meant more to Olivia than any flowery compliment could have. She watched him walk away into the darkness, his tall figure eventually swallowed by shadow. Then she climbed the narrow stairs to her small room above the tavern and lay awake for hours, hope and fear warring in her heart. The courtship continued through the summer in a pattern that became both precious and precarious. Isaiah came to the tavern 3 or 4 times a week, always respectful, always genuine. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. He told her about losing his mother to fever when he was 16, about learning to run the ranch alongside his father until his father's death 2 years ago left him sole owner. She told him about her mother's disappointment in her choice to run, about the guilt she carried for leaving Emma behind even as she worked to create a better future for them both. The town noticed, of course. Gossip spread like wildfire through Hot Springs. Some people were scandalized that Isaiah Dalton, a respected rancher with good prospects, would court a tavern girl. Others were curious, wondering if there was more to Olivia than met the eye. Still others were cruel, spreading rumors that grew more vicious as the weeks passed. "I heard she has 3 other men on the hook, working them all for money," Olivia overheard one woman saying in the general store. "I heard she was a prostitute in St. Louis and came here to escape the law," another whispered. Poor Isaiah Dalton, bewitched by a pretty face. His father would be ashamed. The words hurt, but Olivia had grown a thick skin over the months. What concerned her more was how the gossip might affect Isaiah. She'd seen the way some of the other ranchers looked at him now, with pity or disappointment. She'd watched women who used to greet him warmly turn away with pursed lips. One evening in late August, after a particularly difficult day where two different people had made snide comments within her hearing, Olivia decided she needed to give Isaiah an out. He just settled at his usual spot at the bar when she said, "Isaiah, we need to talk, privately." His brow furrowed with concern. "Of course. Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly, just complicated." She glanced around the busy tavern. "Can you wait until closing? It's important." "I'll be here." The next 2 hours dragged interminably. Finally, the last customer left and Olivia locked the door. Isaiah was already stacking chairs without being asked, a routine he'd fallen into. When they finished, they went out to the back alley where they'd shared several stolen moments over the past weeks. "What's troubling you?" Isaiah asked immediately. "This courtship," Olivia said, forcing herself to be direct. "It's damaging your reputation. People are talking, judging you for keeping company with me. You could have your pick of respectable women, girls from good families who would bring you nothing but credit. Instead, you're here, being associated with a tavern worker, and it's costing you." "Costing me what?" "Respect. Standing in the community. I've seen how people look at you now, Isaiah, some with pity, some with disdain." Isaiah crossed his arms, leaning against the wall of the building. "And this concerns you because you deserve better. Because I care about you too much to be the reason you're ostracized. You care about me." Isaiah's voice softened. "Of course I do," Olivia said, frustrated that he was focusing on that instead of the problem. "These past 2 months they've been wonderful. You've made me feel valued and respected in ways I never have before. You've made me hope for things I thought were impossible. But that's exactly why I can't let this continue if it's hurting you." Isaiah stepped closer, his blue eyes intense in the dim light from the tavern's back window. "Olivia, do you know why I started courting you? You said you admired my character." "I did and I do. But it's more than that. Before I met you, I was going through life doing what was expected, what was proper, what made sense for a man in my position. It was a good life, but an empty one. Then I walked into this tavern and saw you standing there, facing down a drunk with a gun, calm and strong and utterly unshakable. You were real in a way nothing else in my life had been for years." He reached out, taking her hands in his. "These past 2 months have been the best of my life. Not despite who you are or where you work, but because of the person you are, your kindness, your intelligence, your loyalty, your courage. If people want to judge me for recognizing quality when I see it, that's their failing, not mine. But the things they're saying are noise. Olivia, I've lived my whole life worrying about what people thought, trying to measure up to some standard of respectability. It made me cautious and closed off. You've shown me that real honor isn't about appearances. It's about how you treat people, about staying true to your values even when it costs you." His grip on her hands tightened. "Being with you hasn't cost me anything that matters. It's given me everything important." Tears prickled at Olivia's eyes. "I'm falling in love with you. That terrifies me because I'm not sure this can work, not in the long term, not with how different our worlds are." "Then let's make it work. Marry me, Olivia." The words hung in the air between them, simultaneously exactly what she wanted to hear and the most impossible thing imaginable. "Marry you," she repeated numbly. "I love you. I've known it for weeks but wanted to wait to be sure you felt the same. But if you're worried about our future, about whether this can last, then let me make my intentions crystal clear. I want you to be my wife. I want to build a life with you, face whatever comes together. Isaiah, I'm nobody. I have nothing to bring to a marriage except debts and a tarnished reputation. You have yourself, which is everything, and you have Emma, who will of course come live with us once we're married. We'll have her on the next train from St. Louis if you say yes. The offer nearly broke Olivia's composure entirely. Emma, here, safe, no longer alone in that boarding house. The dream she'd been working toward for 8 long months, suddenly within reach. People will say you're making a terrible mistake, she whispered. Let them say it. Olivia Jackson, will you marry me? She looked at him, this good man who saw past surfaces to the truth beneath, who judged her character and found gold when everyone else saw only tarnish. She thought about the life he was offering, the partnership and respect and love. She thought about Emma, finally reunited with family. She thought about her own heart, which had already made the decision even if her mind was still catching up. Yes, she said. Yes, Isaiah, I'll marry you. His face transformed with joy, and then he was pulling her close, his arms around her, holding her like she was something precious. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck and held on, feeling safe for the first time since she'd left St. Louis. When Isaiah finally pulled back, it was only far enough to cup her face in his hands. "May I kiss you, please?" Olivia breathed. The kiss was gentle at first, almost tentative, as if they were both aware of how significant this moment was. Then it deepened, becoming a promise, a claiming, a celebration. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I should ask formally, do this properly," Isaiah said, his voice rough. "Call on you in a respectable setting, speak to, well, you don't have a father, but perhaps Harmon." Olivia laughed, slightly giddy. "Isaiah, you just proposed to me in an alley behind a tavern. I think we're past worrying about conventional propriety." "Fair point." He grinned, and she realized it was the first time she'd seen him truly relaxed, without that thread of guardedness he usually carried. "How quickly can you be ready? I don't want a long engagement." "Neither do I, but there are practical matters. I need to give Harmon notice, arrange for Emma's travel. We need to have the ceremony, I suppose." 2 weeks, Isaiah decided. "That gives you time to settle things here and me time to prepare the ranch for Emma's arrival. We'll have a simple ceremony, just the essentials, unless you want something more elaborate. Simple is perfect." "I don't need elaborate, Isaiah. I just need you." They spent another hour making plans, their words tumbling over each other in excitement. Finally, reluctantly, Isaiah said he needed to get back to the ranch. "I have to be up before dawn," he said, "but I'll be back tomorrow evening and we'll continue planning. In the meantime, you should send word to Emma." "I'll write to her tonight," Olivia promised. "She'll be so happy, Isaiah. She's wanted us to be together again for so long. Then we'll make it happen. I promise you, Olivia, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you and Emma are happy and safe." After one more kiss, longer and deeper than the first, Isaiah left. Olivia climbed the stairs to her room and immediately sat down to write to Emma, her pen flying across the paper as she shared the incredible news. Then she lay in bed, too excited to sleep, planning the life that was suddenly, miraculously within reach. The next morning, Olivia requested a meeting with Pete Harmon. He listened to her news with a mixture of surprise and calculation. "Dalton actually proposed. I'll be honest, girl, I had my doubts it would go that far. It has. We're marrying in 2 weeks, and I'll need to leave your employment." Harmon stroked his chin. 2 weeks isn't much notice. You'll leave me in a bind, having to find and train a replacement." "I'll work up until the day before the wedding," Olivia offered, and I'll train whoever you hire as thoroughly as possible in the time we have. I suppose that's fair." Harmon studied her. "You're sure about this, Olivia? Dalton's a good man, but marriage is permanent. If it doesn't work out, you can't come back here. This town will have even less tolerance for a failed wife than they do for a tavern girl." The warning was sobering, but Olivia's resolve didn't waver. "I'm sure. Isaiah is a good man and we love each other. That's as solid a foundation as any marriage can have." "Well then, I wish you luck. You've been a fine employee, probably the best I've had. I'll give you a solid reference if you ever need one, though I hope you won't." "Thank you, Mr. Harmon. I appreciate that." Word of the engagement spread through Hot Springs with predictable speed. The reactions ranged from scandalized to skeptical to, occasionally, genuinely happy. Rosa, the cook, hugged Olivia tightly and promised to make a special cake for the wedding. A few of the regular customers who'd always treated her with respect offered their congratulations, but the majority of the town's response was less enthusiastic. "It won't last 6 months," Olivia heard someone predict at the general store. "He'll regret it when she shows her true colors," another added. "Poor man, trapped by a pretty face and false tears." Olivia held her head high and ignored the whispers. In a few weeks, she'd be Mrs. Isaiah Dalton, living on the ranch, away from the judgment and scorn of the town. She could endure anything for a few more weeks. Isaiah, meanwhile, was dealing with his own share of criticism. Several other ranchers made pointed comments about his choice. 2 women who'd been angling for his attention for years suddenly turned cold. The minister at the church Isaiah attended expressed concern about his decision to marry someone of questionable virtue. Isaiah's response was characteristically direct. "Olivia Jackson has more virtue in her little finger than most people in this town have in their entire bodies. She works hard, sacrifices for her family, and conducts herself with dignity despite being disrespected daily. If that's not virtuous, I don't know what is." The minister, chastened, agreed to perform the ceremony. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Olivia worked her final shifts at the tavern, training a nervous young woman named Sally who just arrived from Texas. Isaiah sent a telegram to Emma with money for her train ticket and detailed instructions for her journey. Together, they acquired a license and made simple arrangements for the ceremony. 1 week before the wedding, Emma arrived on the afternoon train. Olivia was waiting at the small station, barely able to contain her excitement. When her sister stepped down from the passenger car, Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Emma had grown. At 14, she was hovering between girl and young woman, tall and slender with Olivia's auburn hair and their father's hazel eyes. She carried a single worn carpetbag, everything she owned in the world. Livy. Emma dropped her bag and ran, and then they were embracing, both crying and laughing at once. "Let me look at you," Olivia said, pulling back to study her sister. "You've gotten so tall and so pretty." "You're pretty," Emma said, wiping her eyes. "And happy. In your letters, I could tell you were working hard, but you sounded tired. Now you look like you're glowing." "That's love, I think," Olivia said, laughing. "Come on, I want you to meet Isaiah. He's waiting at the hotel." Olivia had rented them a room at the modest hotel in town for Emma's first night, a bit of luxury before they moved to the ranch after the wedding. Isaiah was waiting in the lobby, and when they arrived, he stood, his hat in his hands. "Emma," he said warmly, "it's good to finally meet you. Olivia speaks of you constantly." Emma studied him with the frank assessment of a 14-year-old who'd learned to be wary of adults. "She says you're a good man, a kind man." "Are you?" "I try to be," Isaiah said seriously, not talking down to her. I love your sister very much, and I promise you I'll spend my life making sure she's happy and safe. And you as well, Emma. You're family now, which means you're important to me too." Something in Emma's posture relaxed. "Okay, I believe you. Good. Now are you hungry? We could get dinner, and you can tell me about your journey." Over dinner at the hotel restaurant, Emma came alive, telling them about the train ride, the places she'd seen, her excitement about starting a new life in New Mexico territory. She was bright and articulate, just as Olivia had described, with a quick wit and an infectious enthusiasm. Watching Isaiah interact with Emma, seeing him engage with her ideas and treat her with respect, Olivia fell even more deeply in love. He'd promised to care for Emma, but she could see it wasn't just a promise, it was genuine. He liked her sister, enjoyed her company, saw her potential. That night, after Emma had gone to sleep in their hotel room, Olivia met Isaiah outside under the stars. "Thank you," she said softly, "for how you were with Emma tonight. She's been through so much, losing our father, then me leaving. She needed to see that you're truly good." "She's wonderful, Olivia, bright and curious and resilient. I meant what I said, she's family now. I'll make sure she gets the education and opportunities she deserves." "I don't know what I did to deserve you," Olivia whispered. "You were yourself. That was more than enough." Isaiah drew her close, and they stood together in the darkness, holding each other on the threshold of their new life. The wedding took place on a clear September morning at the small church on the edge of town. The ceremony was simple, just the minister, Emma as witness, and a rancher named Tom Sterling who'd been Isaiah's friend since childhood. Olivia wore a pale blue dress she'd sewn herself, and Isaiah wore his Sunday best, his hair neatly combed, his boots polished. The minister kept the service brief, perhaps still disapproving but professional nonetheless. When he pronounced them husband and wife and Isaiah kissed her, Olivia felt something settle in her soul. She was married. She was Mrs. Isaiah Dalton. She had a family again, a home, a future. A small reception followed at the hotel, just cake and coffee with Emma and Tom. The other townspeople were conspicuously absent, but Olivia found she didn't care. The people who mattered were there. Tom, a sandy-haired man in his late 20s with laugh lines around his eyes, made a toast. "To Isaiah and Olivia. I've known Isaiah since we were boys, and I've never seen him happier than he's been these past 2 months. Olivia, you're good for him. You've brought out a side of him I was starting to think didn't exist, the side that knows how to live instead of just work. Take care of each other, and may you have many happy years together." They toasted with coffee, and then it was time to head to the ranch. Isaiah had brought a wagon with a padded seat, and he'd arranged a place for Emma in the back, nestled among some of Olivia's belongings that she'd been packing over the past week. Her possessions were few, mostly clothes and books, but Isaiah had treated each item as if it were precious. The ride to the ranch took about an hour, following a well-worn trail northeast from town. The landscape was beautiful in the morning light, all golden grass and distant mesas under an endless sky. As they traveled, Isaiah pointed out landmarks, telling stories about the land, gradually revealing the boundaries of his property. "It's not the biggest ranch in the territory," he said, "but it's good land with reliable water and decent grazing. My father chose well when he settled here." When the ranch house came into view, Olivia caught her breath. It wasn't a mansion, but it was solid and well-maintained, a 2-story structure of adobe and wood with a wide porch wrapped around the front and side. Corrals and outbuildings dotted the area around it, everything neat and orderly. "It's wonderful," Olivia said. "It's home," Isaiah replied. "Our home now." He helped both women down from the wagon, then swept Olivia into his arms to carry her over the threshold, Emma laughed and followed them inside. The interior was sparse but comfortable, with good furniture and a cleanliness that suggested Isaiah took care of his space. The main room served as both sitting area and dining room, with a large fireplace dominating one wall. A kitchen extended off to one side, and a hallway led to what Olivia assumed were bedrooms. "The main bedroom is upstairs," Isaiah said, setting Olivia down. "Emma, I've prepared the room at the end of the hall for you. It's not large, but it has a good window and space for a desk, since Olivia tells me you like to read and study." "Can I see it?" Emma asked eagerly. "Of course, it's your room." While Emma explored, Isaiah showed Olivia around. The house was indeed comfortable, with details that suggested a woman's touch in the past, Isaiah's mother's influence still lingering. But it was also clearly a bachelor's space now, functional but lacking warmth. "We can change anything you like," Isaiah said. "Add what you need, rearrange, decorate. I want this to feel like your home, not just mine." "Our home," Olivia corrected gently. "We'll make it ours together." Emma reappeared, her face glowing. "There's a desk and a bookshelf and the prettiest quilt on the bed. Isaiah, did you do all this for me?" "I wanted you to feel welcome," Isaiah said. "This is your home now, Emma, for as long as you need it." Emma hugged him impulsively, and Olivia saw Isaiah's surprise give way to pleasure as he awkwardly patted her back. That first day set the tone for their new life. Isaiah showed them the ranch, introduced them to his 4 hired hands who lived in the bunkhouse, explained his operation. In the evening, they had a simple dinner that Olivia prepared from the well-stocked pantry, and then they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Is it always this beautiful?" Emma asked. "Wait until you see the stars," Isaiah said. "Without the town lights, you can see thousands." He was right. As darkness fell, the sky transformed into a river of light, the Milky Way stretching overhead in a glowing band. They sat in companionable silence, the 3 of them, watching the celestial display. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Isaiah took Olivia's hand. "Ready to see our room?" Nervous excitement fluttered in Olivia's stomach. "Yes." The master bedroom was upstairs, spacious and private, with a large bed and windows that looked out over the ranch. Isaiah lit a lamp, casting warm light across the room. "I should tell you," he said, suddenly looking uncertain. I've waited for the right person for marriage. So if I'm clumsy," or Olivia pressed her fingers to his lips, stopping the flow of words. "So have I. We'll figure it out together." The tenderness in his eyes made her heart ache. Slowly, giving her time to object, he began unpinning her hair, letting it cascade down her back. His fingers trembled slightly as he worked at the buttons of her dress. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "I still can't believe you're my wife." "I'm real," Olivia assured him, "and I'm yours." Their wedding night was everything it should be, awkward and sweet and filled with gentle discovery. They learned each other slowly, with patience and care, and when they finally came together, it felt like a completion, 2 halves becoming whole. Afterward, lying in Isaiah's arms, Olivia felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Are you all right?" Isaiah asked immediately, concerned. "I'm happy," Olivia said. "Happier than I knew I could be. A few months ago, I was serving drinks and being scorned by everyone I met. Now I'm married to a wonderful man, my sister is safe, and I'm home. It feels like a dream." "It's real," Isaiah said, echoing her words from earlier. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "And it's just beginning. We have our whole lives ahead of us, Olivia. I'm going to make sure every day is better than the last." It was an impossible promise, but lying there in the darkness, warm and safe and loved, Olivia chose to believe it. The first months of marriage brought adjustments for all 3 of them. Olivia learned the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings and long days, the constant work required to keep everything running. She took over management of the household and discovered that she had a talent for it, organizing supplies, managing the small vegetable garden, even learning to cook more than the simple meals she'd known before. Emma thrived in the new environment. Isaiah hired a tutor, a retired teacher from Santa Fe who rode out twice a week to work with her, and Emma absorbed knowledge like a sponge. In her free time, she helped around the ranch, learning to ride and care for horses, even assisting with some of the lighter chores. But the town remained a complication. When Olivia occasionally accompanied Isaiah into hot springs for supplies, she still felt the weight of judgment. Women whispered behind their hands. Men looked at Isaiah with what might have been pity or might have been scorn. One afternoon in late November, while Olivia was at the general store, she overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. "It's been 2 months since the wedding," a woman was saying. "How long before he realizes his mistake?" "I heard she doesn't even know how to run a proper household," another responded. "That ranch will go to seed with her in charge. And the sister, Dalton's taken on responsibility for a child that isn't even his. The girl will probably turn out just as bad as Olivia, another tavern girl in training." Olivia's hands clenched around the bag of flour she was holding. She wanted to turn around, to defend herself and Emma, to throw the cruel words back in their faces. But before she could move, another voice joined the conversation. "That's enough." It was Rosa, the cook from the Red Rose Tavern, her voice sharp as a knife. "You talk about Olivia Dalton like you know her, but you don't know anything. I worked with that girl for 6 months. She was honest, hardworking, and kind even when people like you treated her like dirt. She's twice the woman either of you will ever be, and Isaiah Dalton is lucky to have her." Silence fell. Then one of the women said huffily, "Well, I never. Come along, Martha. We don't need to stay where we're not appreciated." Footsteps retreated. Olivia took a shaky breath and turned to find Rosa watching her, arms crossed. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly. "You shouldn't have to hear that garbage," Rosa said. "But you should know, not everyone thinks that way. Some of us know quality when we see it. I appreciate that more than I can say. How's married life treating you?" "Wonderfully. He's everything I could have hoped for, and Emma is so happy at the ranch." "Good, that's what matters," Rosa smiled. "The gossips will find someone else to pick apart eventually. You just keep living your life being happy. It's the best revenge." Olivia returned home that afternoon thoughtful. She told Isaiah about the encounter while they were doing evening chores together, mucking out stalls in the barn. "Does it bother you?" he asked. "What people say?" "Sometimes," Olivia admitted. "Not for myself so much anymore. I'm happy and their opinions don't change that. But I worry about you, about your reputation, and I worry about Emma. What if the other children are cruel to her? What if our past affects her future?" Isaiah set down his pitchfork and came to her, taking her hands despite the dirt on both of them. "Emma will be fine because she has you as an example, strong and resilient and good. As for me, I knew what I was doing when I married you. Any damage to my reputation is a price I gladly pay, and honestly, I think the damage is more in your mind than in reality. The people whose opinions matter, like Tom, like Rosa, they support us. The rest are just noise. I hope you're right." "I am." He kissed her softly. "Trust me, Olivia. We're building something real here, something solid. A few nasty gossips can't tear that down." As autumn gave way to winter, Olivia found he was right. The gossip didn't disappear, but it faded into background noise, meaningless and distant. She was too busy, too content, too deeply embedded in her new life to give it much energy. Christmas came, and Olivia threw herself into making it special for Emma, the first real Christmas they'd celebrated since their father's death. She and Isaiah rode into the foothills to cut a small pine tree, which they decorated with strings of popcorn and paper ornaments Emma made. Isaiah gave Emma a beautiful leather-bound journal and Olivia a delicate silver locket. Olivia gave Isaiah a new shirt she'd sewn, with careful stitching and pearl buttons. Emma gave them both drawings she'd made of the ranch, remarkably skilled for her age. They attended Christmas services in town, and while some people were still cold, others greeted them with genuine warmth. Tom Sterling invited them to his family's ranch for Christmas dinner, where Olivia met Tom's parents and siblings and was treated with respect and kindness. "You're good for Isaiah," Tom's mother said privately. "I can see it in his eyes. He was turning into a hard man, all work and no joy. You've brought the joy back." As winter deepened into January and February, Olivia settled more fully into her role as ranch wife. She learned to preserve food, to manage accounts, to make soap and candles. She helped with the animals when the regular hands were overwhelmed. She became a partner in the ranch's operation, not just a decorative addition to Isaiah's life. Their love deepened too, moving beyond the initial passion into something richer and more complex. They learned each other's moods and needs, developed private jokes and comfortable routines. They talked through problems together, made decisions jointly, supported each other through difficulties. In late February, Olivia realized she was pregnant. The realization came gradually: missed monthly courses, morning queasiness, a strange fatigue. She waited a few weeks to be sure before telling Isaiah, choosing a quiet evening when Emma had gone to bed early. "I have news," she said, finding him in the barn checking on a mare about to foal. "Good news, I hope," Isaiah said, looking up from examining the horse's legs. "I think so." "I hope so." Olivia took a breath. "I'm going to have a baby, our baby." Isaiah froze, his face going through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, wonder, joy, concern. Then he was moving, crossing the distance between them in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. "A baby," he repeated. "We're having a baby." "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, even though she could feel his happiness in the way he held her. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it. Olivia, you're giving me everything. A wife I love, a family, now a child. I don't have words." "You don't need words," Olivia said, laughing and crying at once. "Just keep holding me." They stood together in the barn, surrounded by the soft sounds of horses and the smell of hay, and Olivia felt her joy expand to fill every corner of her being. She was going to be a mother. She and Isaiah were creating a new life, another branch on their family tree. Emma was thrilled when they told her. "I'm going to be an aunt at 14. That's wonderful. Can I help take care of the baby?" "Of course," Olivia said. "We're all going to take care of this baby together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring. As Olivia's belly swelled, Isaiah became even more protective, insisting she rest more, do less physical work. She indulged him partly because his concern was touching and partly because the growing baby did tire her more than she'd expected. One warm April afternoon, while Olivia was resting on the porch, a visitor arrived. It was a woman in her 50s, dressed in the modest but respectable clothes of a townswoman. Olivia didn't recognize her at first. "Mrs. Dalton," the woman said uncertainly. "I'm Margaret Hollies. My husband owns the livery stable in town." "Of course, Mrs. Hollies. What can I do for you?" Margaret twisted her hands nervously. I came to apologize. I was one of the women who spoke badly about you, who judged you for working at the tavern. I said cruel things and I was wrong." Olivia sat up straighter, surprised. "What changed your mind?" "My daughter Sarah ran away last week. She'd been courting a boy we disapproved of, and when we forbade her to see him, she left. She's 17, Mrs. Dalton. 17 and alone somewhere in this territory. Margaret's voice shook. It made me think of you, leaving your home at 21, making your own way in the world. I'd always thought of that as shameful somehow, a woman alone. But now that it's my daughter, I realize it takes courage. And I thought about how you worked an honest job to support your sister, and I wondered if Sarah finds work, will people treat her kindly? Or will they judge her the way I judged you? Tears streamed down Margaret's face. I'm so sorry. I was wrong to be so harsh, so uncharitable. You didn't deserve the things I said about you. Olivia's throat tightened. She stood and moved to Margaret, placing a gentle hand on the older woman's shoulder. I forgive you, Mrs. Hollies, and I hope your daughter comes home safely or finds somewhere safe to land if she doesn't come home. Thank you, Margaret whispered. You're very kind. After Margaret left, Olivia sat on the porch for a long time, processing the encounter. It didn't erase all the hurt of the past year, but it helped. One person had looked past prejudice to see truth. One person had admitted fault and sought forgiveness. It was a small thing, but it mattered. That evening, she told Isaiah about the visit. He listened quietly, then said, "People are complicated. They're capable of great cruelty and great kindness, sometimes within the same day. I'm glad Margaret apologized. You deserved that acknowledgement." "Do you think others will change their minds?" Olivia asked. "Maybe. Probably not all of them, but some. And our child will grow up knowing that we chose love over convention, that we valued character over reputation. That's a good lesson to learn." Their son was born on a sweltering August afternoon, after 12 hours of labor that left Olivia exhausted and elated in equal measure. The midwife, an older woman named Mrs. Chen who'd traveled from Santa Fe, placed the squalling infant in Olivia's arms, and she fell in love instantly. "He's perfect," Isaiah said, his voice thick with emotion. He sat on the edge of the bed, tracing a gentle finger down their son's cheek. "Absolutely perfect." They named him James after Isaiah's father and Benjamin after Olivia's. James Benjamin Dalton, pink and wrinkled and howling his displeasure at being born. Emma was allowed in shortly after, and she gazed at her nephew with wonder. "He's so small. Was I ever that small?" "Even smaller," Olivia said. "You were a tiny thing when you were born. Can I hold him?" Olivia carefully transferred the baby to Emma's arms, showing her how to support his head. Emma looked down at James with such love and protectiveness that Olivia's heart ached. "I'm going to be the best aunt ever," Emma declared. "I'll teach him to read and ride horses and everything important." The first months of James's life were a blur of feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights. But they were also filled with joy. Those first smiles. The way James's eyes followed Isaiah around the room, the tiny fingers that gripped Olivia's hand with surprising strength. Isaiah was a devoted father, getting up with Olivia for nighttime feedings even though he had to work the next day, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor with James when he was fussy. Watching him with their son, Olivia fell in love with him all over again. One evening in October, when James was 2 months old, the family of 3 sat on the porch watching the sunset. James nursed contentedly while Emma read aloud from a book of poetry, her voice clear and confident. "I've been thinking about the future," Emma said, setting down the book. "About what I want to do with my life." "And what do you want to do?" Isaiah asked. "I want to be a teacher. I want to help other girls like me, girls who don't have families or resources. I want to show them that education can open doors." Emma looked at them seriously. "Is that foolish?" "It's wonderful," Olivia said, "and very possible. You're brilliant, Emma. You could absolutely become a teacher." There's a normal school in Santa Fe, Isaiah added. It trains teachers. When you're old enough, we can look into enrollment there. Emma's face lit up. Really? You'd support that? Of course, Isaiah said. Your family, Emma. Your dreams matter to us. Watching Emma's joy holding her son sitting beside her husband, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude. This life, this family, this love, it had all seemed impossible a year ago. Now it was her reality, solid and real and hers. The years that followed were good ones. James grew from infant to toddler to a rambunctious little boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's stubborn determination. Emma continued her studies, and at 18, enrolled in the normal school in Santa Fe, living in a respectable boarding house and excelling in her classes. The ranch prospered under Isaiah and Olivia's joint management. Olivia had a head for numbers and organization that complemented Isaiah's knowledge of cattle and land. Together, they expanded the herd, acquired more acreage, hired more hands. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable and secure. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the town's attitude toward Olivia shifted. It started with individual conversions, people like Margaret Hollies who'd been forced to question their prejudices. Rosa from the Tavern, who'd never wavered in her support, became a close friend. Tom Sterling's family embraced them fully, but broader acceptance came through Olivia's actions more than anything else. When a fever swept through Hot Springs one winter, Olivia organized care for the sick, going door to door with supplies and assistance despite the risk to herself. When the schoolteacher left unexpectedly, Olivia filled in for 2 months until a replacement could be found, teaching the town's children with patience and skill. People began to see what Isaiah had seen from the beginning, that Olivia's character was gold, regardless of where she'd once worked. They saw her kindness, her competence, her devotion to family and community. They saw that she was, quite simply, a good person. By the time James was 5 years old, Olivia could walk through Hot Springs without whispers following her. Women greeted her on the street. She was invited to join the church's ladies' auxiliary. When she and Isaiah attended social functions, they were welcomed warmly. "It's strange," she told Isaiah one night as they prepared for bed. "I spent months being invisible or scorned. Now people act like they've always accepted me." "People have short memories for their own prejudices," Isaiah said, "but I'm glad they've come around. You deserve respect, Olivia. You always did. I had it from you. That was enough." "Was it, though, truly?" Olivia considered. "In the sense that your love and respect made me happy, yes. But I won't lie and say the community's rejection didn't hurt. I'm human. I wanted to be seen accurately, not through the distorting lens of judgment. So yes, the acceptance now is gratifying, even if it came later than it should have." "Fair enough." Isaiah pulled her close. "I'm proud of you, you know. Not just for winning people over, though you did that, but for staying true to yourself through it all, for not becoming bitter or hard." "I had too much to be grateful for to waste energy on bitterness," Olivia said. "A husband who loved me, a sister who was thriving, work that mattered. How could I be bitter when I had all that?" Emma graduated from normal school at 20 and took a teaching position in Albuquerque. She wrote frequently, full of enthusiasm for her students and her work. She'd grown into a confident young woman, passionate about education and determined to make a difference. When James was 7, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, with more fatigue and sickness. But when their daughter arrived on a crisp March morning, everything was worth it. They named her Rose after the beauty and resilience of the flower, and she was different from James from the start, quieter, more observant, with a serious expression that made her seem older than her infant weeks. James was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. He'd bring her toys, sing to her in his off-key 7-year-old voice, and sit for hours just watching her sleep. "He's going to be a protective big brother," Isaiah observed. "Like his father," Olivia said, smiling. Life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. The ranch continued to thrive, and Isaiah hired a foreman to handle some of the day-to-day operations, giving him more time with his family. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were building something lasting, a legacy for their children. One summer day, when James was 10 and Rose was 3, the family took a picnic up into the foothills. They spread a blanket under a cottonwood tree near a creek, eating fried chicken and biscuits while the children played in the shallow water. "Do you ever think about how different life could have been?" Olivia asked Isaiah. They were lying side by side on the blanket, watching clouds drift across the sky. "How do you mean?" "If you hadn't walked into the tavern that night, if you judged me the way everyone else did and kept walking. If we'd never met." Isaiah rolled onto his side, propping his head on his hand to look at her. "I think about it sometimes, and I'm grateful every day that I followed my instincts instead of convention. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia. You and our children, this life we've built. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even though it was hard at first, even with all the judgment and gossip, especially because of that. Easy things don't teach you anything. Building our life together, facing down prejudice, proving everyone wrong that made us stronger. It showed us what we're capable of individually and together." Rose toddled over, her dress wet from the creek, and climbed onto Isaiah's back. "Papa, come play, duty calls," Isaiah said, laughing. He scooped Rose up and carried her, squealing, back to the water, where James was building a dam out of rocks. Olivia watched her family, her heart so full it almost hurt. This, right here, was everything she'd fought for, everything she'd sacrificed for. This moment of simple joy, her children playing, her husband laughing, all of them together and safe and loved. Emma came home for a visit that autumn, bringing with her a young man named David Garrison, a fellow teacher she'd been courting. He was tall and earnest, with kind eyes and an obvious devotion to Emma. Over dinner, he and Isaiah talked about education and ranching, finding common ground despite their different backgrounds. After the meal, Emma and Olivia walked in the garden Olivia had spent years cultivating. "I love him," Emma said simply. "David is a good man, Livy. He sees me, really sees me the way Isaiah sees you." "That's all I could hope for you," Olivia said. "Someone who values you, who respects you, who loves all of you, not just the convenient parts. He proposed last month. I said yes." Emma's face glowed with happiness. "We're planning a wedding for next spring. Will you and Isaiah come to Albuquerque for it? Of course. We wouldn't miss it for the world." Emma's wedding the following May was a joyful affair, held in a small church in Albuquerque with about 50 guests. Emma wore a dress of ivory silk, and her face radiated joy as she spoke her vows to David. Watching her sister marry a man who clearly adored her, Olivia felt the last piece of her old life fall into place. Emma was settled, happy, building her own future. The mission that had driven Olivia to work at the Red Rose Tavern all those years ago was complete. "You did it," Isaiah whispered to her during the reception. "You saved your sister. You gave her the life she deserved." "We did it," Olivia corrected. "I couldn't have done any of it without you." As the years continued to pass, the Dalton family became an established part of the community. James grew into a thoughtful teenager who loved the ranch and showed every sign of one day taking over its operation. Rose proved to have a gift for music and a voracious appetite for books. Emma and David had 2 children of their own, visiting several times a year and bringing noise and laughter to the ranch. On Olivia's 35th birthday, Isaiah gave her a small leather-bound book. "Open it," he urged. Inside, in Isaiah's neat handwriting, were pages of writing. Olivia read the first entry and felt tears prick her eyes. "The day I met her, I knew she was different. Olivia Jackson stood behind that bar like a queen holding court, unshakable despite the danger around her. I'd never seen courage like that, quiet and steady. I knew in that moment I wanted to know her better, wanted to understand the strength I saw in her eyes." "You kept a journal?" Olivia asked, her voice shaking. "I started the night I met you. I wanted to remember every moment of falling in love with you, of building our life together. It's all here, every important day, every milestone. I thought, now that we've been married 13 years, you might like to see how it looked from my perspective." Olivia clutched the journal to her chest. "This is the most precious gift anyone has ever given me." "You're the most precious gift anyone has ever given me," Isaiah countered. "So we're even." That night, Olivia read through the journal by lamplight while Isaiah slept beside her. She read about how nervous he'd been before their first real conversation, how he'd agonized over proposing, worried she might refuse. She read about his awe when James was born, his pride in Emma's accomplishments, his daily gratitude for their life together. "I judged her character and found gold," one entry read. "Everyone else saw a tavern girl. I saw strength, loyalty, intelligence, grace under pressure. I saw exactly who I wanted to spend my life with. Best decision I ever made, asking Olivia Jackson to be my wife." Olivia closed the journal and set it carefully on her bedside table. Then she curled against Isaiah's warmth, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. In the morning, she'd tell him how much the journal meant. For now, she just held on to him, grateful beyond words for the man who'd looked past surface judgments to see her true worth. As their children grew and eventually left home to build lives of their own, Isaiah and Olivia grew older together, their love deepening with every passing year. James took over the ranch at 23, marrying a spirited young woman named Catherine who helped him expand the operation even further. Rose moved to Denver to study music, eventually becoming a piano teacher of some renown. Isaiah and Olivia moved into the foreman's house, a smaller but comfortable dwelling on the ranch property, giving James and Catherine the main house. But they remained active in ranch life, helping where they could, babysitting their growing brood of grandchildren, staying involved and engaged. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Emma and David came with their 4 children, now ranging from teenagers to young adults. James and Catherine had 3 children who raced around the property with boundless energy. Rose arrived with her husband, a gentle man named Patrick, and their infant son. That evening, after a feast prepared by 3 generations of family, Tom Sterling stood to make a toast. He was gray now, weathered by time and sun, but his eyes were still sharp and kind. "30 years ago," Tom said, "I stood as witness when Isaiah Dalton married Olivia Jackson. Some people thought he was making a mistake. The town talked, they judged. But Isaiah saw what I saw, a woman of exceptional character, strength, and heart. And he had the courage to choose love over convention, substance over appearance." Tom raised his glass. "In the 3 decades since, Isaiah and Olivia have built an extraordinary life. They've raised children who are kind and capable. They've created a legacy of integrity and hard work. They've shown all of us what real commitment looks like, what it means to honor your vows through good times and bad. Isaiah, you were right to trust your judgment. Olivia was gold then, and she's gold now. To 30 more years of happiness." "To 30 more years," the assembled crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Olivia looked around the room at the faces she loved, the family she and Isaiah had built together. Her eyes met Isaiah's across the table, and in his gaze she saw everything: love, pride, gratitude, joy. He'd given her all of this, not just the material comfort of the ranch, but the respect, the acceptance, the unwavering support that had allowed her to bloom into her fullest self. Later, after the guests had gone home or retired to various bedrooms around the ranch, Olivia and Isaiah sat on the porch of their small house, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Thank you," Olivia said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For judging my character instead of my circumstances. For giving me this life." Isaiah took her hand, his fingers lacing with hers in a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "You gave me the life, Olivia. Before you, I was just going through the motions, doing what was expected. You taught me what really matters: courage, loyalty, love that doesn't waver even when things are difficult. You made me better than I was." "We made each other better," Olivia said. "That's what real love does." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd faced judgment and gossip and emerged stronger for it. Two people who'd chosen each other despite the obstacles, who'd built something lasting and real. Olivia thought back to that night in the Red Rose Tavern, to the moment Isaiah had walked through the door and changed her life forever. She'd been so certain that no one would ever see past the surface, that she was doomed to be judged by her employment rather than her character. But Isaiah had looked deeper. He'd seen the gold beneath the tarnish, the quality beneath the questionable circumstances. And in choosing to pursue her despite the social cost, he'd given her the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to be fully herself, fully seen, fully loved. "I'd do it all again," she said. "Every difficult moment, every whispered insult, every challenge, all of it to end up right here with you." "Me too," Isaiah said. He lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Every single moment." As the stars brightened overhead and the desert night settled around them, Olivia and Isaiah sat together, two people who dared to judge character over convention, who'd found gold where others saw only tarnish. They'd built a life of love and legacy, proving that real worth had nothing to do with circumstances and everything to do with the content of one's heart. Their story, which had begun with judgment and defiance, had become one of triumph and enduring love. And sitting there on their porch, hands clasped, hearts entwined, they knew that choosing each other had been the best decision either of them had ever made. The years continued to pass gently, bringing with them the comfortable rhythms of a life well lived. Isaiah and Olivia grew old together, their hair silvering, their faces lined with decades of laughter and work. But their love remained constant, a steady flame that warmed everything it touched. When Isaiah's health began to fail in his 70s, Olivia nursed him with the same devotion he'd shown her throughout their marriage. She sat by his bedside, reading to him, holding his hand, ensuring he was comfortable and surrounded by family. One evening, as the sun set over the ranch they'd built together, Isaiah looked at Olivia with eyes that still held all the love of their first days together. "No regrets," he whispered. "Not a single one." "Neither do I," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me everything, Isaiah, everything that matters. You were the gift, Olivia. You always were." He passed peacefully that night, surrounded by children and grandchildren, held in Olivia's arms until the very end. The town of Hot Springs mourned Isaiah Dalton as a pillar of the community, a man of integrity and vision. But for Olivia, he was simply the man who'd looked past the surface to see her truth, who judged her character and found gold, who'd loved her without reservation for 43 years. She lived another decade, active and engaged, watching her grandchildren grow, even welcoming several great-grandchildren. She never remarried, content with the decades of love she'd shared with Isaiah, with the memories they'd created together. When Olivia finally passed away at 82, peacefully in her sleep, the entire community turned out for her funeral. The church was packed with people whose lives she'd touched, whose children she'd taught, whose problems she'd helped solve. They remembered her not as the tavern girl who'd once been scorned, but as a woman of grace, strength, and unwavering integrity. Emma, now elderly herself but still sharp and spirited, gave the eulogy. "My sister saved my life," she said, her voice carrying through the hushed church. "Not once, but many times over. She worked a job that brought her scorn so that I could have opportunity. She loved me when I had nothing else. And when Isaiah Dalton offered her a chance at happiness, she had the courage to take it, despite all the voices telling her she wasn't worthy. But she was worthy, she always was, and every life she touched was richer for knowing her." Olivia was buried beside Isaiah on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones simple but elegant. The inscription on Olivia's read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, a woman of gold." In the years that followed, their story became part of the family lore, passed down through generations. Great-grandchildren who'd never met them grew up hearing about the cowboy who'd judged character over circumstances, and the tavern girl who'd proved her worth through decades of love and integrity. The ranch continued to thrive under the stewardship of their descendants, and the small house where Isaiah and Olivia had spent their later years was preserved, becoming a cherished space where family gathered for special occasions. And on summer evenings, when the sunset painted the New Mexico sky in brilliant colors, children would play in the yard where James and Rose had once played, where generations of Dalton children had learned to ride and work and love the land their great-great-grandparents had built together. The story of Isaiah and Olivia Dalton became a testament to the power of seeing beyond surface judgments, of valuing character over convenience, of choosing love even when the world questions your choice. They'd faced prejudice and overcome it, not through anger or bitterness, but through the simple act of living with integrity, of building a life so full of love and purpose that eventually no one could deny its value. They judged her for working in a tavern, those long-ago voices full of scorn and condemnation. But Isaiah Dalton had judged her character and found gold, and in doing so, he'd given them both a legacy that would endure long after the gossips were forgotten. Their love story, born in an unlikely place and forged in the face of judgment, became exactly what such stories should be. A reminder that true worth is measured not by circumstances, but by the content of one's character, and that love, real love, has the power to transform lives and leave a mark that echoes through generations. In the end, Isaiah and Olivia Dalton had built more than a successful ranch or a large family. They'd built a testament to the power of seeing clearly, of judging fairly, and of loving completely. And that legacy, passed down through children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, proved more valuable than any amount of gold ever could be. Their story was complete, a circle closed, a life fully lived and deeply loved. And in the quiet moments when family gathered at the ranch, when stories were shared and memories cherished, the spirits of Isaiah and Olivia seemed to hover nearby, content in the knowledge that they'd built something lasting, something true, something that would endure long after the last whisper of old gossip had faded into forgotten dust. They had judged her for working in a tavern, those voices so certain of their righteousness. But Isaiah Dalton had judged her character and found gold, and in that simple act of seeing truly, he'd created a love story for the ages, A reminder that the best things in life often come from looking past the surface to find the precious truth beneath.